Okay, well, good afternoon. My name's Kevin Leopard. I'm the grower, owner, operator for Thailand Hemp Farms. Just like oscillating field, pulsed field, electric field technology to fight cancer was discovered 30 years ago, cannabinoids and their usefulness are now being discovered as well. Let's talk about cannabis cultivation in Thailand. I've been growing cannabis about 47 years. I've grown cannabis all over the world. Here are some of Thailand Hemp Farm's practices and advice. When starting seed, it's illegal to import seed here to Thailand, so you have to start seed. We make our own seed here. If you're growing THC-containing flower, you're going to be relegated to growing dioecious seed or male and female seed. When you're starting seed here in Thailand, it's a good idea to start a lot of seeds at once, because since we're just starting off with making seeds, they're dioecious, there's going to be a lot of hermaphrodites, you're going to look for phenotypes that you want to work with. When you're starting seed, you want to put one seed per seedling pot. This way the transplant shock is minimized, not having to break them up. This will save you about a week or more of grow time or permanently damaging the plant. Starting seeds indoors, that's one of the grow tents I use right there. When I start seeds indoors, I'll keep the lighting close to them. This keeps them short. Also running the lighting system 18 to 20 hours per day will keep them in a vegetative state of growth. Here in Thailand, this is very important. Where we grow here, it doesn't snow, it doesn't freeze. So if you're growing foreigner seed, it's important to harden them off before you move them outside. Hardening off is a very difficult process, but it's very important. Most foreigner seeds won't grow if you just order seeds from Amsterdam or somewhere. You might have some trouble growing them outside here. Here I am. I think we're starting about 6,000 plants there. And then also, what I do here is, let's see. Sorry, man. I'm not a professional speaker. Anyways, we start a bunch of seeds at once, and then we look for the phenotypes that we like. Phenotypes are the traits. Each seed will have a different phenotype. And then we look for the ones that are good, and we follow through with growing those. I use a lot of Thai heirloom strains. Like Thai heirloom is like a Thai landrace. Landrace means like pure Thai seed. And I use a lot of the Frisian duckfoot. Right now I've mixed Frisian duckfoot with Skittles, wedding cake, all sorts of different. What I've done is I've mixed the genetics together with the Thai genetics to make them so they grow outside here, because your best light's going to be sunlight. Breeding them with Thai heirloom, genetics helps them to grow outside here in Thailand. Since it's illegal to import any sort of cannabis into Thailand, seeds bred and developed here in Thailand are very important. Like strains like Thai Big Bud's one I've developed myself. I've been growing that one for about 2 years, but it hasn't been stabilized yet. I've got to get it to where anytime I sell seeds or give someone seeds, these all grow the same phenotype. Then I've mixed Thai with the duckfoot, and then I've got squirrel tail, Phoi Thong, and others. All of these are landrace strains that have been mixed with foreign genetics. Legal seed made here in Thailand. To remain legal, it is best to follow Thailand's rules and regulations. And let's see. If you're going to need seed or cannabis, I can supply to you quantities legally, grams, ounces, kilos, and tons. We do a lot of rainwater collection. Rainwater is going to be your best water to use. Rainwater contains trace amounts of minerals and hydrogen peroxide. Hydrogen peroxide will green up your plants. It also helps by releasing micronutrients locked into the soil. However, if you live in an area that has very poor air quality, do not use the rainwater. Always check the water before you use it. Check the pH. Natural pH of rainwater is 5.0. Never use city water directly on your plants or at any stage of growth. Water temperature should be between 64 and 72 degrees. If you're going to use city water, grab it, put it outside for a couple days. This allows some of the chlorine and treatment chemicals that are going to be in city water to evaporate out. The temperature of the water will also dictate how much oxygen is dissolved into the water. It also will dictate how much water your plant will intake. Hydrogen is also necessary for building sugars in the plant. It is obtained almost entirely from water. Hydrogen ions are imperative for a proton gradient to help drive the electron transport chain in the photosynthesis process and for respiration. Well or groundwater will likely contain large amounts of minerals. These can clog up drip irrigation if you're using drip irrigation. Be aware of your water source. A disgruntled employee or a saboteur could pour a few gallons of glyphosate or weed killer into your water supply, and that would really goof up your endeavor. Regardless of your source, always check the pH before you use it. Testing the water pH along with water quality should always be a standard procedure for every cannabis grower. The pH of your water and the pH of your soil or your substrate or growing medium is the most important thing for a cannabis plant. Correct pH creates an environment where the plant can absorb any and all nutrients she needs to grow. The temperature of the water also affects the pH value, so you need to check the temperature of the water when you check the pH. Whenever I transplant plants, I water the area to receive the transplant. This helps reduce the transplant shock onto the roots. Anytime that you're working with transplants or, exposed roots, you want to keep that area wet. Another thing to remember is always have some extra plants growing on the side. If you have replacements, you can bring a pot. If you have a hermaphrodite or something like that, you can replace that. Or you're also going to have some mortality. Growing indoors or outdoors, anywhere, having replacements is a must. Using pots allows you to have a modular system. Use cloth or grow pots that are porous. Raise your plants up off the ground. My experience here in Thailand has been cats, dogs. When I go to water, drag the hose across some seedlings. So if you put them in pots or used like raised beds, your hose will go around that. Now, if you have a situation like that where you've got a bunch of seedlings clumped together, you can put it down into the water. Just hold the seedling container just below the water, and then when the bubbles stop emerging from the dirt, you can set it on the table and the plants will separate. That way you don't damage these roots will have little hairs. Some of them you can't see that come off, and if you break those, it'll cause the plant to stunt, which means it won't grow as much. And then when you start from seed, the seed plant will have a taproot. This is a taproot here. Clones won't have taproots. So you want to be real careful with seedlings. I'll do like that. I'll gently lift it out. And I use rice hulls a lot too. If you're going to be transplanting and moving stuff around, if you put transplants at the bottom, it will ease in transplantation. Always keep everything wet and be gentle. You got lots of time and this is your job. Another important consideration here in Thailand is insects. Cutworms will kill a lot of seedlings. So if you have a lot of seedlings going on the ground, I don't know what time they come out, but they come out. And they will kill a lot of your seedlings and you lose a lot of your work. So always put your work up on a table, keep it up off the ground. Caterpillars can be a contributing factor to bud rot. These herbivores cause plant injury while feeding, and their manure provides a nutrient source for disease establishment. Another important consideration in reference to growing here in Thailand, excuse me, is after a rain. Water will splash dirt up onto your plants. This dirt will contain eggs from various insects. Canidia can infect plants the same way. Rain splash will bring canidia up off the dirt and hit your leaves, and then when you take that flower to harvest, you'll have problems with mold. Cannabis has interacted with microbial pathogens for hundreds of millions of years and has evolved complex defense systems, yet one must still remain vigilant. Another important, probably one of the most important considerations to growing in Thailand is putting lights on your plants. It's good if you put a light every 21 or 30 feet. My experience has been if it's more than that, the plant will start to sex out. And if you're growing photoperiod plants, you want to make sure that you've got plenty of light. One way to check, put your hand behind the light, or excuse me, put your hand behind the plant, and if it's throwing a shadow, you know it's getting enough light. If you don't do that, the plants will begin to sex out immediately. This is a this is a CBD grow here, and that's the results. That's about, we're harvesting these right now. That was a 1,200 plant grow. Cannabis doesn't need a lot of water. Cannabis doesn't need a lot of water. I have a saying, you cannot get the Kool-Aid, or you cannot get the sugar out of the Kool-Aid once you've put it in. You can always add more amendments as you need it. So it's always good to under-fertilize and under-water, because you can always come back and add more. Sometimes you can flush a plant if it has, some problems, but when growing in dirt, it's not an easy thing to do. Hermaphroditism. This is a hermaphrodite. You can see a hermaphrodite because you'll see the female characteristics here, and that's a male pollen sac there. You want to remove those immediately. The hermaphroditism is a heavily present trait here in Thailand. Some growers feel that hermaphroditism is brought on specifically by stress. While this can be true, it's primarily a genetic trait that will be brought on to all your females in your crop if they're allowed to exist in the grow. Sometimes the plants will turn hermaphrodite out of desperation as well. It's also a natural thing, but I would recommend that you remove those immediately. I was a consultant for the Philippine Department of Science and Technology several years ago, and although I didn't work for them with cannabis, all the farmers where I would go to consult on their farms, they would have like a grow over here, and all of it would be hermaphrodite. It's like in Asia, hermaphrodites have taken over. I recommend learning about sustainable agriculture techniques and making and using a living soil. Using a living soil, I rarely need to use any type of amendment. Learn about mycorrhizae. The plant's of roots can only take in nutrients within its rhizosphere, or the area surrounding its roots. This encompasses about 1/10 of an inch. So think about that. When you water or anything else you put into the soil, it's not being used unless it's right there next to the roots. What will happen is if you use a mycorrhiza or living soil, you don't have to worry about that. Also, you want to add in some molasses that feeds microorganisms living in the soil. This is a little diagram of how it works. This will be on the World Class Business Leader website, so you can check that out. And then you can see the trichoderma and the mycorrhizal fungi. What I'll do is I use teas. I make teas like I experiment a lot. It's like a hobby. And that batch right there was really good. So what I'll do is I'll take some of the dirt from before and I'll add new stuff. This is azomite. Azomite provides micronutrients, some rice hulls, some buffalo poop, buffalo key, and that was a great picture because you could actually see it growing on the outside of it. To better survive the plants, what they'll do is they'll secrete out, the roots of the plants will secrete out certain exudates. These will attract the microorganisms to come and live. It's a symbiotic relationship. It's like they're parasites. They live on the roots. The roots provide an infrastructure for them to live upon. But what they'll do is they'll secrete, the roots of the cannabis plant will put out exudates in order to attract particular organisms like fungi and bacteria. And they do this to acquire whatever they need, like nutrients or water. This increases their field of exposure. This is just an example of, see the root could be over here, and then all these guys here are grabbing stuff and pulling it. They work together. If anyone ever saw the movie, what was the movie with the blue people? I forget the name. But yeah, and then she's like, oh, they're talking to each other. Well, that's kind of what's happening here. Thank you for that. When you're using a living soil, this will help, ensure that your grow has a nutrient when it needs it. Sometimes I've put nitrogen, but I rarely put anything on the plants. The dirt has everything it needs already. We've got a pile of dirt, one pile about half the size of this that we mix with a tractor, and it's been sitting for like almost 2 years. And we'll take some of that dirt and we'll mix it with other dirt, and the leaves on the plants that I grow are like this big. And people come over to the farm, and the Thais, everywhere I live in a village and everyone around me is Thai. And they've never seen anything like it, and it's because of the soil. We use a lot of rice hulls. Carbonized rice hulls are a great thing because they can be purchased very cheaply and by the truckload here in Thailand. They're very plentiful. Rice is everywhere. I use rice hulls in everything. The microbes and the fungi love the pores and the pumice and the biochar. These provide excellent conditions for mycorrhizal fungi and microorganisms to thrive. Mycorrhizae and beneficial fungi usually take a minimum of 90 days to mature. So since you're using teas, you can reuse soil sometimes 2 times, but then you need to remove it. But if you're doing living soil, you can make teas and add more micronutrients and beneficial fungi and stuff like that back to the dirt. But like when I was young, my mom would make bread, and all her friends had their little bacterial cultures. They would trade for her to make bread taste differently. Sort of the same thing. So you just take your dirt from your last grow, especially if it did well, and take some of that and mix it with the new soil, about half and half. It just depends on your budget. Now, here I am making compost tea. It's important to aerate. When you're making compost tea, you want to put a little bubbler down in there, because if you don't, it will become anaerobic, and you don't want anaerobic tea. You want your tea to be aerobic. That's very important. Making tea is a great thing to do because it makes everything more soluble. I'm not sure how to explain it. I use a lot of teas. I do all kinds of crazy stuff. Using fulvic acid and humic acid. Fulvic acid is an excellent product to use because it crosses the membranes of plant cells easier. Fulvic acid is more particularly effective when used as a foliar spray to convey nutrients to the plants more quickly. Some plant nutrients are mobile. Some plant nutrients are immobile. So you might have a big plant. Over here you might have a little problem going on, and you can't really get anything to it from the roots, so you want to use a spray. Fulvic acid has a smaller molecular structure, so you can use humic acid. Humus is a very important aspect of soil, but fulvic acid is made from humic acid. It's just it has a smaller molecular weight, if that makes any sense. I'm sorry. And also it has the same chelating ability, which means it grabs nutrients and ions and stuff like that. So it has the same chelating. Chelating, it's a Greek word for crab, I think, like grabbing stuff, you know. And so if I'm going to do any kind of, I don't really need to do anything because I use this living soil. It's amazing. I don't do anything, but in case you need to spray some plants, fulvic acid is the ticket. Never spray flower. Spraying flower will increase the flower's interior humidity and create conditions for spore germination. I make and use my own cultures. So there's I forgot to advance the slide. I make, you know, experiment. You can change the flavonoids. You can affect the terpene, the flavor, smell of the bud by growing hydroponically in soil. I used to grow hydroponically for about 15 years, and then I found the best mix is half soil and half hydroponic. That way, you know, if I need to flush a plant or if I need to make some changes, I can do so. But at the same time, I've got the flavor and the benefits of growing in soil. Back in the day, I was a consultant. I used to own a business in Arizona called 420 Instructor, and I'd ride around in my Corvette and charge people money to tell them about how close the plants were to their lights or they're using too much water. That was a great job. Watering your plants or how much you water your plants is a thing that's difficult to teach. Here in Thailand, a correct watering schedule is very important. Like playing pool, I can offer instruction to you, but the implementation of my instruction is up to you. Your skill will come with experience. You can read about growing ganja all over the internet, and it's wonderful. There's lots of information there. But the only way you're going to get really good at growing ganja is by actually growing ganja. You know, you got to get a few crops under your belt, and then you'll understand. Identifying light poisoning is very important. If you've got a crop and there's a street light over here or some source of light, that needs to go. The Thai government will come out unannounced and inspect your garden. That's a CBD garden there. That's a THC farm there. If you're going to do wiring in Thailand, I recommend you do your own wiring. Start from the ground up when you build a grow. Thailand is wonderful. I love Thailand. But the same protocols and the same infrastructure that support if you're using high intensity discharge or you're going to have huge electrical supply, I recommend you do that yourself. Anytime where I'm at, there's no large facilities. That's what I need. I need a place where I can have a warehouse, but I don't have the ability to pay and have this electrical system upgraded to support all that infrastructure of light. I'm an old school grower. I use a lot of high intensity discharge lighting. I know that there's a lot of talk about LED and right on. But I've never got a sunburn from an LED light. HED lighting, I got to wear sunglasses and go inside like a zombie. You know, it's like, it's a lot different. I've also noticed that growing with LEDs, the difference has been the more power you put into a grow, the more I get back out of it. The larger the yields, the better the terpenes, flavonoids, completely different. But I have yet to learn about LEDs because I don't use them. So forgive me, I don't know a lot about that. Okay, let me get on here. If you're using drip irrigation and your water supply is from the ground, you're going to have to check your emitters regularly because if you don't you need to check your water supply. Because if you're using drip irrigation, it can clog up very easily. I do all of the work on the farm myself. Even though I have drip irrigation in place on all my farms, I hand water. This gives me an opportunity to look at each plant. If there's a bug or a leaf miner or something, you know, I can address that. Last time I checked, I killed 60 leaf miners. I'll just tear that leaf off or that portion of the leaf because they're just not welcome there. Okay. Yeah, integrated pest management. What I'm doing is a form of integrated pest management. Since I don't use any chemicals, I use ladybugs. And if I spray a chemical to kill another bug, I'm going to inadvertently kill the ladybugs. So it's good to use ladybugs. I used to try to use birds, but the birds were bringing diseases to the plants, and the doves were eating the stems of the baby plants. So I was putting out, what's the name, broken rice, cow meow. And the birds just loved it. And I was like, cool, you know, I got all these birds coming to work for me for free. Well, it turned out to not be good. Also at harvest, what I'll do is when I pull plants, or when I cut plants, I'll come back and I'll look at the soil to see what's been happening. You know, I can inspect the roots to see what type of action's been going on in the rhizome. If you're going to do an indoor grow, you need to have a generator. The electrical supply here in Thailand is unpredictable. If the power goes out, so does the ventilation. That can be devastating to an indoor grow. So you always want to have, like I said previously, you want to build your own electrical. Having a generator is a very good thing. And then you can also get switches that will just click right on. If the electric goes off, then that thing will start up. Also, we use on our grows, we use on-site man security or dogs. We don't have any type of DVR, digital video recorders, because in order to record an alarm event, lights have to come on. If lights come on, that can interrupt the flowering cycle. We don't, you know, I don't know how long the lights are going to be on. It depends on the pixelation setting of the DVR. But, so what we'll do is we'll build a little house there, and it's easy to find a Thai worker for that. Pay about 10,000, 20,000 baht a month. Buy them some whiskey. You're good to go. Ventilation is also very important. That's a THC grow. And this is probably one of the most important aspects of growing is the plants actually have little mouths on the leaves. They're called stomata. In nature, plants constantly need their oxygen and their carbon dioxide supplies refreshed. The plants have little mouths on the leaves called stomata. This is a stomata here. Now they'll have some on the top of the leaves, and most of them are on the underside of the leaves. And that's part of how they respirate, how the plants breathe. They'll bring in water from the roots up to the plant, and then it goes out through the stomata. Photosynthesis is a process where cells are filled with chlorophyll. Chlorophyll absorbs blue and red light waves. These waves are used to convert the stuff that they suck up into glucose. And then they change the glucose. They use that they use carbohydrates to grow. And that's their food. And the stomata are little mouths that exist on the leaf surface and more so on the underside. Water diffuses to the stomata and evaporates into the air. This process is called transpiration. It's a part of the plant metabolism. The stomata must open to let out carbon dioxide that is produced as a waste product of the photosynthesis process. What I'll do, I have the luxury of having a hose. So I'll go out every day and I rinse down the plants. It simulates rain and it also washes the plant, which removes dust, finite matter that may have settled on the leaves during the day. And this allows the plant stomata and photosynthesis to go on unimpeded. It also simulates rain. Rinsing down the plants is very important. If you do this after about a week or two, I'm sure you'll notice a difference. One of the most important aspects of growing weed or cannabis, is curing. You need to have, if you don't cure it properly, you'll ruin your entire effort. Your whole endeavor will be ruined. Yeah. Sorry. Time finished? Oh. Ooh, okay. Yeah, I'm almost finished. The room's air should be cleaned with a two-step filtration particulate UVC. UVC, if you're going to use ultraviolet light, I recommend the C spectrum. UVC is an energy-rich light in the wavelength of 200 to 280 nanometers. Another thing you need is a hydrometer. You want to also always monitor your humidity and the temperature of your room. Sunlight will degrade your product. In Thailand, can I go back? In Thailand, they cure outside, and that's not really correct. And all the terpenes, everything changes when it's exposed to light. But that would change their style. That's how much time I have right there. Huh? Oh, okay. Anyways. Yeah, there's too much to talk about. Sorry. I thought I had this time to 28 minutes. I apologize. Anyways, let me finish up. That's CBD flower there. There's some Thai stick being cured on the left there. And then what I do is when I breed plants is I'll put nets under to collect the seeds. Then when I finish, I'll cut these strings and I'll wrap it up, and then I'll collect all the seeds because the seeds are very valuable. And then colloidal silver is used to make feminized seeds. It's important to start your grow off. When I was in Texas, I was a real estate developer. I show this picture because I just wanted to reflect to everyone that this is not some silly endeavor that we're doing here. There's a lot of substance to it. I'm personally involved heavily in growing cannabis. That was my house I built in Texas, and I own the entire subdivision. If someone's going to come visit your grow, make sure they wear a lab coat, have shoe covers. There's one farm there. There's some Thai stick and tiger tail. There's some Thai landrace. And then that's a close-up of the trichomes. And there's another farm. That's a Thai stick farm. And there's some young plants. It's not advancing. There I'm looking around. There's some of the growers. Thank you very much. Yeah.